your name, where you live, and what you work on.
So my name is, wait, did we want to start with the serious stuff or the
Yeah,
Muslim
we're going to
stuff?
start with the
Okay.
serious. Yeah, let's start with specifically with the serious stuff.
Okay. So my name is Muna Jundi. I'm from Flint, Michigan, born and raised, and I am currently involved with an organization called the Free Syria Fund, which is C4 lobbying for Syria.
How did you get involved in this fund?
To be honest with you, what we had done over the course of 6 years is we began with advocacy in a 501c3 sense about 6 years ago. And then I think that when we began realizing that this is more of a marathon than a sprint, then we realized as a Syrian American community that we needed to get the advocacy machinery a little bit more sophisticated. And so then we, expanded to C4, we have a PAC, and so my focus right now is trying to help the Free Syria Fund get off of its feet. We work on legislation, lobbying for particular issues related to Syria, specifically the Caesar legislation that passed last Congress, also passed this Congress unanimously. We're trying to work it into the Senate, sanctions against Russia and Iran regarding their interference in Syria. That's kind of our focus right now.
Could you tell us a little bit about the Caesar legislation? What is that? Why does it matter?
So, oftentimes people tell us that there are, that legislation is symbolic when it comes to foreign policy, because really it is the purview of the executive branch to decide how we're going to act. Other than really funding and budget, it's really about the executive branch. However, we believe that Congress has, being the same party as the current president, definitely has an important role to play. And so it's more than just symbolic. It's about informing and educating not just members of Congress, but helping those members of Congress to then relay our message to the executive branch. And so the Caesar legislation, really is an accountability. It calls for sanctions and accountability for Assad's war crimes, as well as a feasibility study for a no-fly zone. I mean, those are the three main elements of the Caesar legislation, and it passed unanimously.
Great. The community's involved in all kinds of humanitarian relief. How hard was it to get people to maybe not move away from the humanitarian relief, but also to get on board with this kind of activity?
So the community got involved, I think, in the political arena pretty quickly, but it was a very small sort of sliver of the community. And part of it really is just the nature of the Syrian Americans and where they come from. So, I'm American born. For me, it was much easier. I was, already involved. I did my first door-to-door knocking campaign when I was 18 years old. I've been involved in different sort of, referendum initiatives in statewide, ballot initiatives in Michigan. So for me, it was a little bit more natural. But honestly, a lot of Syrian Americans are absolutely, have no experience with political organizing. They were never allowed to. And so it's taken a little bit of time, I think, for the community to get involved. Some people were already politically engaged, but really as a community as a whole, I think that it's taken 2 or 3 years. And really the biggest way that this happened was, I think, the ultimate recognition that, the decision on how to help in Syria is going to be made here in the U.S. And there is no other Syrian diaspora community that is going to be able to do this work. Everybody else can work on the humanitarian, and it doesn't mean that Syrian Americans can't as well, but we have the primary responsibility to try to work in the advocacy arena.
In thinking of advocacy and civic engagement, political engagement, the community in Flint's quite special. Could you just give us a quick overview of the broader Muslim community in Flint and the kinds of things you guys have done up there?
So the Muslim community isn't just Syrian in Flint. It's a actually diverse community. We like to boast that we have over 26 different representations from different countries at the Flint Islamic Center. But really, I think that we are a community that has been politically engaged for decades. And so, we've worked on many things, active in the interfaith arena, active with the Flint water crisis. I mean, in as much as a community can be active in the Flint water crisis. You know, trying to think what else.
The Broom Center.
Well, the Broom Center, which is basically in the north end of Flint, and it's a nonprofit that's really about trying to empower the local community in the really the most impoverished area of Flint, you know, through education and you know, community engagement to empower them to be able to really, you know, stand up and be their own voice. So there's, you know, there's a few initiatives that are going on. You know, the Jewish cemetery, you know, Flint Islamic Center actually, you know, immediately I remember that I got an email from the board saying, can you tell us how is it that we can help donate to this? And so I told them, I said, here's the link that's you know, where it's happening, and they immediately donated several $1,000s. So, you know, I just feel like the community generally has been very involved. And honestly, when it comes to advocacy for Syria, they've been, you know, they funded for a few years, you know, one of our organizations, probably a good 50% of it.
One final question for you. Looking at all of the fear-mongering, the toxic political discourse we're in, and juxtaposing that to the enormous amount of good that you guys are doing up in Flint, what would you like, what message would you like your average American who doesn't know the community in Flint,
Right.
what would you like them to know?
I would like them to reach out and to try to meet a Muslim. And I know that sounds so cliche, but I feel like it's just the way that we're the political correctness, the way that it's set up is that even at work and even in our neighborhoods, we actually don't get a chance to have meaningful interaction with our colleagues and with our neighbors in a way that they actually really get to know us unless, you know, we get together on a social level. So I feel like to me, the first step is, you know, breaching the barrier of the unknown. So meet a Muslim. If that means getting out of your comfort zone, contacting, you know, the local community. You know, most Islamic centers have interfaith events regularly. You know, take a friend. If you're not very comfortable yourself, take a friend. To me, that's sort of the first step. Secondly, we're not a monolithic group. So I can't say, as an American Muslim, I speak for American Muslims. I can't speak for anybody but myself, and I imagine there are other Muslims who think like me, but I don't represent everybody. So, you know, understand that you got to sort of take us as you do everybody else based on the way that we are and the principles that we espouse as individuals.